Hey guys, tonight we sink into the velvet darkness of a forgotten castle corridor, where the torchlight flickers on cold stone and secrets drip from the walls like candle wax. You walk softly now, your slippers muffled against ancient flagstones, as ivy claws through arrow-slit windows. There's a rustle, a head not rats, though you wouldn't rule them out, but something more breathless, a gasp, a stifled laugh. You peek around the corner. A boy, maybe 16, cheeks flushed and inks, fingers clutching a rolled parchment, darts from the garden entrance, nearly knocking over a brass basin. You follow him because, well, what else is there to do in a place like this? He's got that look, half terror, half thrill, that only ever comes from one thing: love. Or really bad food poisoning, but judging from the scroll, it's love. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I want to know what's your local time, and where are you listening from? Let's see who's tuning in from the latest time zone. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step carefully through the winding halls, where every candlelit alcove seems to whisper its own version of romance gone wrong. The castle around you isn't quite the gleaming fairy tale of Disney's imagination. It smells faintly of damp straw, burnt onions, and the general musk of too many people sharing too few privies. This place has been patched up through generations stone. Slapped onto stone, wooden beams that creak even when no one's walking. And yet, somehow, it breathes. You pass a rusted suit of armor with one gauntlet missing and a suspicious dent in the helmet. Maybe someone fell in love and got thumped for it. Wouldn't be the first. Castles were complicated love machines, full of rules, power plays, and enough scandal to fill every velvet-bound diary in Europe. And right now, you're witnessing the start of one. Through an archway carpeted in creeping moss, you glimpse the outer gardens. The moon hangs low, buttery and full, casting a silvery glow over hedgerows sculpted like animals that no longer exist. Beyond a cluster of rosebush, half dead and valiantly holding Anne, you see her. She's not wearing a crown, but you can tell by the way her gown shimmers like water in motion, and how the very air pauses for her. Princess, her fingers twitch at her sides, her shoulders rigid, but her eyes soften the second the boy returns, scroll slightly crumpled, but still intact. You're close enough to hear the whisper. He hands it to her and says something about hawks flying better at night. Is that a code? Probably. In these days, love wasn't just risky, it was treason. Royal blood was property, a bargaining chip for alliances, and the thought of wasting it on someone without a title was enough to summon the executioner. But here she is, reading a poem that rhymes duty with booty, and her lips curl in a smile that could undo empires. The scroll shakes in her hands as she reads, either because she's cold, or because falling in love for a medieval noble was basically asking the universe to mess with you. You sneak behind a crumbling column and try not to breathe too loudly. The boy too clean to be a peasant, too rough for a knight, leans in. You recognize him now. He's the falconer's apprentice. Not technically a servant, not exactly noble. He lives in the in-between, that space in the castle hierarchy reserved for people who smelled slightly of feathers and had too many opinions. Falconry was a big deal back then, status, skill, and symbolism all wrapped in one flapping bird of prey. A princess speaking to a falconer, already suspicious, but smiling, laughing. That's practically a scandal in itself. Historians still argue, you recall from a particularly dry scroll you skimmed once, whether falconers were ever considered truly acceptable companions for nobility. One side says they were trusted enough to teach princes. The other says, well, they smelled like bird droppings and stole apples from the kitchens. You watch as the two of them lean closer, their foreheads nearly touching. The girl lifts her hand to his cheek, but stops just short of contact. Even this almost touch could cost them everything. Suddenly, a sharp rustling in the hedge. You duck. A black cat bolts across the path, tail up like a banner of panic. The falconer steps back. He glances around, eyes darting, then nods stiffly and hands the princess a small ring, hawk-shaped trinket carved from bone, strung on a bit of leather. Not romantic by modern standards, but in this world, that's basically a diamond ring from a vending machine, and just as risky. She clutches it to her chest, looks up at the stars like they might offer advice, and whispers something you can't quite catch, maybe a vow, maybe a prayer. You shiver, not from cold, but from knowing what comes next. These things don't stay secret long. Castles are gossip engines. The walls practically have ears, except the walls are maids, stewards, page boys, and bored cooks who've got nothing better to do than spy. Somewhere, already, someone's writing a letter. Not the kind folded into heart shapes, but the kind sealed with wax and sent straight to a paranoid king. And you're just trying not to sneeze. A spider crawls across your boot and pauses, as if judging your life choices. Valid, as the couple parts weighs her slipping back toward the stone tower. Him disappearing through the rows. You step back, mind buzzing. You've just seen something rare. Not just forbidden romance, but sincere affection in a place where affection is usually bought, traded, or faked for status. And it's happening under the noses of people who would definitely burn down a chapel to stop it. You shuffle away from the hedge and notice something add a smudge on the stone wall near where the boy stood. You rub it, charcoal, a small hawk, symbol, barely visible, a secret mark, a signal for meeting again. Clever, if risky. You pocket a broken bit of tile from the wall, a souvenir for your trouble. No one said bedtime stories had to be peaceful. As you wander back into the dim hallways, torchlight flickering on the uneven walls, you wonder how far this will go. Love, after all, is rarely content with moonlit gardens and stolen poems. It wants more, it demands risks. And in this place, every risk has a price. Tomorrow, the kitchens will hum with rumors. The queen might start asking questions. And somewhere, maybe in the falconer's modest chamber, another letter is being written. Folded small, hidden deep, carried by hands that know the danger. You should sleep now, but the castle's air buzzes with electricity, with possibility. Love has entered. The game board and the rules are about to change. The next morning arrives cloaked in fog, curling thick and damp around the castle towers like a curtain of secrecy. And you rise before the bell tolls, padding quietly down the narrow servants' corridor that smells of lye soap and yesterday's leek stew. The castle is waking up slowly, scullery maids yawning into aprons, stable boys grumbling over frozen buckets, a cook chasing a runaway chicken with a ladle, and you slip past them all unnoticed, because today your eyes are set on the Mews, that strange, echoing place where falcons screech and flutter in hooded darkness, where love once again risks being revealed through the soft beat of wings. The falconer's apprentice, the same boy from last night with the ink-stained hands and the wide, terrified eyes, stands near a perch now, murmuring to a goshawk as he adjusts its jesses, the leather thongs that bind it to his glove. You watch. From behind a beam, the cold air biting your nose, and you realize that falconry isn't just a hobby in this world. It's a language, a dangerous one. That hawk, with its hooked beak and fierce amber eyes, is more than a bird. It's a messenger, a spy, a symbol, and he knows it. The boy, his name is Emmerich, by the way, which feels both charming and slightly doomed, feeds the hawk a sliver of meat and then glances around as if expecting someone. He's already risked everything by meeting the princess in the garden. Now he's about to risk even more. You can tell because he unwraps a piece of linen, revealing a tiny scroll, barely longer than your thumb. He fastens it carefully to the bird's leg, gives it a soft kiss on the beak, adorable but very unsanitary, and lifts his arm. The hawk takes flight in a silent, ghostly arc, vanishing into the fog toward the towers. Meanwhile, in the princess's chambers high up, behind arched stained glass and thick tapestries that smell of lavender and secrets, she waits by the window, eyes scanning the sky. She's wrapped in a cloak too thin for warmth, but rich in embroidery, her hair braided, like a noble woman's duty demands, but her gaze is restless, always searching. And then, like clockwork, the hawk lands gently on the stone sill. She gasps softly, taking the scroll from its leg, and strokes its wing in silent thanks. You watch from the shadows of a neighboring balcony, close enough to see the tears prick her eyes as she reads. It's poetry again, of course. Emmerich has a flair for tragic metaphors, comparing her to a caged bird and himself to the wild wind. He really leans into the drama, which, in fairness, is basically a requirement for medieval lovers. But this letter, this one's different. It ends with a question. Would you run if I asked you to? And suddenly, you feel it too, that flutter in the chest, that rush of possibility. Because forbidden love in castles doesn't just sit and smile across banquet tables. It burns, it schemes, and it needs allies. That's where you come in. Later that day, you find yourself pressed into a sun-warmed corner of the castle library. A cavernous room filled with books, chained to shelves, and monks grumbling about ink stains. The princess arrives under the pretense of studying Latin psalms, but you know better. You hand her a slip of parchment hidden between the pages of a treatise on astrology. She reads it quickly, then burns it over a candle, the ash falling like snow into her lap. You're not sure what's more dangerous, the king discovering her rebellion, or the queen discovering her rival. Because here's the twist. There's always a queen, and they never miss a thing. Queen Elisande, in this case, is beautiful in the brittle way of stained glass, sharp edges, cold light, unlikely to shatter if struck too hard. But her eyes, those don't shatter, they burn. She's already noticed the change in her stepdaughter. The too long sighs, the dreamy expressions, the late-night walks in the gardens. She watches from her chambers with a mirror turned toward the tower, lips pressed in suspicion. Historians still argue whether Elisande was simply jealous, or if she had her own long-lost love turned sour. One theory says she'd once tried to run with a stable hand named Aldrich and was caught halfway across the river, dragged back in chains, and married off for political gain. The only evidence is a scrap of torn fabric found decades later in the river reeds, embroidered with a faded E. But the queen never confirms, and in this version of history, she watches in silence, preparing her next move. You feel her gaze, even when she isn't in the room. It's like that. Still, love presses on. Over the next week, the castle seems to pulse with unseen tension. You carry letters hidden in bread loaves. You watch as Emmerich pretends to train hawks, but glances toward the tower every few minutes. You even help the princess's maid forge a wax seal to keep up appearances. Every glance, every slip of paper, every stifled smile lit a rebellion. A beautiful, doomed rebellion. And yet, in the middle of it, you find something unexpected. Laughter. Real, belly shaking, ridiculous. Laughter. One afternoon, while hiding in a forgotten corridor behind a tapestry room, the princess nearly trips over a startled cat and collapses, giggling, into Emmerich's arms. He pretends to catch her like a hero in a bard's tale, only to tumble both of them into a dusty heap of laundry. They laugh like children, and for a moment the weight of rank, duty, and danger falls away. But not for long. That night, the queen sends for her. A casual conversation, they call it, but no one believes. That you tag along, naturally, hiding behind a screen of perfumed jasmine vines just outside the antechamber. Queen Elisande sips wine from a silver goblet and smiles with all her teeth. "You've been distracted lately," she says. "Has some tutor caught your fancy? Perhaps a knight with shiny boots?" The princess demurs, eyes lowered. The queen leans in. "Do be careful where your affections wander, my dear. Castles are filled with sharp edges. People trip so easily." A threat, wrapped in silk. Classic. As the princess exits the chamber, her knuckles white around her skirt, you know the clock has begun ticking. Somewhere, the king will soon be informed. And kings, unlike queens, do not bother with subtlety, but love. Love finds a way. That night, the princess sends you to the kitchens with a fake order for pheasant bones, something the alchemist apparently needs for moon tinctures, which no one questions because no one wants to talk to the alchemist. While you're there, you hear a rumor: a falcon escaped. No one knows how, no one knows why, but you do. The plan is forming. Escape, a rendezvous, a final leap of faith. But this is only the beginning. You return to your chamber, heart thudding, thoughts racing. Castles are not kind to secrets. And tomorrow, the hunt will begin. Morning breaks with a peculiar kind of silence. The kind that doesn't feel peaceful but instead warns of something lurking beneath, like the hush before a storm. You wake with a chill pressing against your spine, not from the cold stone floor, where you've managed to doze off in a servant's corner, but from the absence of noise, no cheerful clatter from the kitchens, no shouts from the stables, not even the hawks screeching in the mews. Something's wrong. You slip into the corridor, your breath fogging in the damp air, and you notice it immediately. Eyes, too many eyes. Pages loitering near stairwells, guards posted at side doors that usually remain unattended, and a maid pretending to polish silver but clearly straining her ears toward the hall where the queen's men have gathered. You edge closer and catch the end of a sentence, a note in the stables, too neatly folded for any servant to have written. Your stomach turns. They found something. Emmerich's handwriting, you suspect. Too poetic, too precise. A dead giveaway. You don't stick around to hear the rest. Instead, you slip through a narrow passage behind the armory, praying no one sees you, and head toward the scriptorium where the princess often hides under the pretense of studying Latin. And sure enough, she's there, seated stiffly between shelves of dusty books, her hands trembling as she folds a page into tighter and tighter squares, eyes staring blankly at the flickering candle in front of her. She doesn't cry. Royal women don't cry, not where anyone can see, but her silence is louder than any scream. You kneel beside her, whisper what you heard, and she nods, already knowing. Of course, she knows. She was raised in this web, taught from birth how fast rumors spread and how short the fall is when you're born too high. We need to burn them all, she murmurs suddenly, grabbing the hidden letters, dozens of them, bound with a ribbon that still smells faintly of clove and lavender. You help her shove them into a small brazier, watching as the flames consume ink and love alike, curling the parchment into ash. The irony isn't lost on you how something so passionate, so alive, turns into smoke in seconds. But it's necessary. The queen is hunting now, and her scent is sharp. As the fire dies, a soft knock interrupts the air. The princess stiffens, you freeze, and the door creaks open just enough for Emmerich to slip inside, his cheeks flushed, hair wind-tossed, and eyes wild. He doesn't speak at first, he just stands there, watching the embers glow in the brazier. Then, finally, he says it. They know. His voice cracks slightly, and suddenly he's not a romantic hero. Not a symbol of rebellion, just a terrified boy who fell in love with someone he should have only bowed to. The princess crosses to him, takes his hands, and for the first time in front of you, they embrace fully, desperately, as if this single act can stop time. It can't, of course. Footsteps sound in the hallway. You act without thinking, pushing. Then behind a curtain, just as the door bursts open and a pair of guards stride in, they barely glance your way, mutter something about a lost cat, and leave again. But the message is clear. They're searching rooms now. It's only a matter of time before they find the hawk tokens, the poetry scraps, the scent of rebellion, baked into the sheets. After the guards leave, the three of you retreat to the alchemist's chamber, hidden beneath the old west tower and reached only by ducking through a door so low even children have to stoop. The air reeks of herbs and damp wool, and the walls are lined with jars containing mysterious things you try very hard not to identify. The alchemist, a wiry man with eyebrows like broom bristles and a voice that creaks like an old door, looks at you like you've just walked in holding a dead goat. Love again, he grumbles. Didn't we go over this last year? You blink. Wait, what? Apparently, this isn't his first royal scandal. He mutters about the Duchess and the stable girl from 3 winters ago, then sighs dramatically and pulls out a scroll. You'll need disguises, decoys, maybe a rat or two. You're not sure whether he's joking, and frankly, you don't want to know. Emmerich explains the new plan. He'll leave the castle at dawn, disguised as a spice merchant's apprentice, and make his way to a sympathetic baron's lands 2 days south. The princess will fake illness something convincing but non-fatal. Stay behind until a false letter from a widowed cousin arrives, requesting her help. Then, under the excuse of a brief familial visit, she ride out with a small escort. They'll meet at the Crossroads Chapel under the full moon. It's risky, insanely risky, but it's all they've got. You're tasked with one of the most dangerous parts, retrieving the princess's personal seal from the royal writing room without being caught. That night, while the castle dines on goose and gossip, you slip into the study, heart hammering. The seal rests innocently beside a scroll of tax records. You snatch it, slip it into your boot, and retreat before the shadows can grow too loud. Back in the tower, the lovers prepared their goodbye. It's not dramatic. There's no sweeping music, no thunderstorm. Just a kiss, a whispered prayer, and a promise. Find me under the yew tree. The next morning, Emmerich leaves with a caravan, dressed in coarse linen, his hawk token hidden in a pouch of saffron. No one stops him, not yet. But the queen watches. From her window, her fingers tapping slowly against the stone. She knows something. You feel it, she always does. Over the next few days, the princess falls ill exactly as planned. Pale face, weak voice, occasional sighs into handkerchiefs, an Oscar-worthy performance. If only they had Oscars back then. Even the king, distracted by border disputes and the latest batch of spoiled wine, barely notices, but the queen does. She visits, offers bitter herbal tea, and strokes the girl's hair with a tenderness that's somehow more frightening than anger. "You'll feel better soon," she says, and you wonder whether she means it or whether she plans to lock her away forever. The letter from the cousin arrives, sealed with the emblem you risked your life to steal. The king, annoyed but unbothered, grants the journey. The escort is chosen. The bags are packed. And finally, the princess rides out beneath a cloudless sky, face hidden beneath the travel veil. You follow on foot, slipping between wagons, heart racing with each turn of the wheel. The road stretches ahead like a question mark, and at its bend, hope, danger, freedom, or perhaps all three. But you don't look back. You can't. Behind you lies a castle with too many walls, too many ears, too many ghosts of love stories that never ended well. Ahead, beneath a yew tree, at the chapel's edge, waits a falconer with a heart full of poetry and mud still clinging to his boots. You reach the chapel at dusk, and it greets you not like a sanctuary but like an accomplice, quiet, weather-worn, and humming with secrets. Ivy drapes over its stone face like a shroud, and the yew tree beside it bends low as though listening. The birdsong has quieted, replaced by the distant creak of saddle leather and the soft crunch of gravel under hooves. You crouch behind the mossy boundary wall, heart pounding with the kind of dread that only comes when everything is either about to go perfectly or collapse spectacularly. The princess rides in slowly, flanked by her escort, 3 knights. Older and bored-looking, more interested in the smell of the nearby inn than the girl they're meant to guard. She feigns fatigue, pressing a hand to her forehead with such delicate grace that they immediately dismount to give her rest. You slip inside the chapel before she does, ensuring Emmerich is there, and he is, pacing in the shadows with a knapsack over his shoulder and a spark of fear and hope in his eyes. The moment she enters, the air shifts and time seems to slow. He bows low, not because he must, but because that's how deeply he feels it, and she rushes to him without a word, burying her face in his chest like it's the only place she's safe. It's a beautiful moment, truly, but also utterly impractical. Because now you all need to move fast. The plan is as delicate as spun sugar. The princess will leave her cloak and veil behind, disguised in a peasant dress that still smells of the castle laundress's soap. You will lead the guards away, posing as a frantic servant who claims she's fainted in the chapel crypt. Meanwhile, Emmerich and the princess will slip through the back entrance and ride toward the southern forest, where a sympathetic friar waits with 2 fresh horses and a vow of silence, purchased with a small bag of silver and a large barrel of wine. But first, you have to convince the guards. You burst out of the chapel door, hair mussed, eyes wide. "My lady, she's collapsed." You cry, gesturing wildly toward the old crypt entrance. The guards hesitate, looking from you to one another, clearly weighing the situation against how much trouble they'd get in if they ignored you. Eventually, one sighs and trudges forward, muttering about delicate nobility and their constant fainting. As he does, you position yourself carefully to block his view of the escape path. Inside, Emmerich and the princess slip out through a tiny side door that groans in protest. You hold your breath as it closes, sealing behind them. The guards never see it. The deception works for now. You leave soon after, disappearing into the dusk, your heart lighter and heavier all at once. For the next 2 days, you follow from a distance, keeping to the tree line, ever watchful for signs of pursuit. Every snapped twig becomes a spy's boot, every gust of wind a whispered threat. Yet somehow, against all odds, the lovers remain. Free, the friar shelters them for a night, offering stale bread, warm cider, and a prayer that's more worried than hopeful. Historians still argue whether this friar ever existed. You recall from one of those musty books back in the scriptorium. Some claim he was a traveling scholar with a love for outlaws, while others believe he was a drunk monk with a flair for drama. Either way, he gives them the chance they need. By the 3rd day, they've crossed into neutral land territory. Not quite friendly to the crown, but not openly hostile either. There's talk of a ship waiting at the southern coast. A merchant vessel bound for a distant duchy where titles don't matter and no one asks about the past. The lovers plan to board it, live as merchants or tutors or whatever roles the world allows. You don't know what awaits them there, whether love can survive poverty and exile, but you know they'll try, and for now, that's enough. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the queen seethes. The deception is discovered sooner than anyone expected. The guards eventually find the chapel empty, the cloak discarded, the horses gone. The king is informed while eating honeyed pears, and he chokes briefly on the news. His fury burns hot and short, as royal rage often does, and then turns to icy calculation. The queen, however, is quieter, more dangerous. She calls for her spies, orders maps, interviews every servant within earshot of the princess's chambers. You are named. You run, fast, through fields and forests, hiding in roadside inns and sleeping beneath hedgerows, always looking over your shoulder. Eventually, you lose the scent of your pursuers, or perhaps they simply give up, their focus turning back to more political matters. A royal scandal is embarrassing, yes, but not nearly as dangerous as a foreign invasion or a poor harvest. Still, the queen never forgets, and you know she's waiting for a slip, a sign, a rumor of the lovers resurfacing. Time passes, seasons shift, the castle moves on. Another noble marriage is arranged, another alliance forged in cold wine and colder stairs. The princess is officially declared in retreat for spiritual reflection, a polite lie to explain. Her absence, Emmerich, is marked a deserter, his name struck from the records. You live in the margins now, blending in with traveling musicians, scribes, traders, anyone who doesn't ask too many questions. And through it all, whispers surface from time to time. A couple matching their description spotted in a coastal town, selling hand-painted charms. A foreign tutor in a wealthy house who speaks with a strange lilt and avoids questions about his homeland. A midwife who swears she helped deliver a child to a noble woman with calloused hands and a hawk-shaped pendant. But nothing is ever confirmed, and perhaps that's for the best. Castles are built for control, for locking things in. But love, as you've learned, doesn't abide by stone walls or bloodlines. It leaks through the cracks, takes root in silence, and grows wild beneath the moon. And sometimes, just sometimes, it escapes. As for you, your journey continues. You never returned to the castle, never heard from the lovers again, not directly. But one day, tucked inside a folded scarf you purchase from a street vendor in a faraway market. You find a scrap of parchment, soft with age. On it is a single sentence, written in the same ink you once helped pass between trembling hands. Thank you. We still dance beneath the yew tree. And in that moment, you smile, because you realize that even in a world of chains and crowns, sometimes love writes its own ending. This one, at least for now, is still unfolding. You find yourself back in the castle, but not as you once were. Not as the quiet observer of tangled romance, nor as the reckless accomplice slipping letters between candlelit alcoves. Now, you return with dust on your boots, a forged name in your mouth, and a scroll tucked into your belt bearing the insignia of a visiting historian. It's been nearly 3 years since Emmerich and the princess vanished into legend, and time, as it always does, has smoothed over the scandal with polite amnesia. A few servants still whisper about the ghost bride, the noblewoman who fled on the eve of destiny, but most have moved on, their attention stolen by new dramas, a wayward duke's debt, a fire in the lower kitchens, and a young page who's convinced the laundry room is haunted by a sobbing nun. But you have not moved on. Not entirely. Which is why you're here again, returning through the grand gates with a heavy cloak over your shoulders and a plausible backstory about researching ancestral records. Your goal isn't academic. You're searching for remnants, traces, the breadcrumbs lovers leave behind when they escape but don't vanish completely. The castle looks the same at first glance: grey stone, towering turrets, windows that catch the light just so, but there are differences. The ivy you once hid behind has been trimmed to nothing. The garden, where the princess once stood in moonlight, now holds a statue of Saint Agatha, her eyes fixed forever on the path that leads nowhere. The falconry yard is quieter now, too. No Emmerich, no secret messages tied to talons. Just one old man and 2 sleepy hawks that seem more interested in napping than politics. Still, you feel something stir beneath your ribs as you walk past the mews. Memory, maybe. Ghosts. You make your way toward the east wing, where the royal archives are kept. It's your cover reading scrolls, copying names, pretending to care about some long-dead baron's genealogy, but what you're really watching for is her, the queen. She still lives, older now, thinner, her beauty sharpened into something nearly spectral. She walks the halls like a rumor, appearing when least expected, her eyes darker than before, perhaps with regret or suspicion or both. You avoid her gaze the first few days, burying yourself in documents by day and listening to the servants' gossip at night. And that's when you hear it. A passing comment, tossed casually over bread and stew. That old maid, Anselma, swears. She sees the princess in her dreams, says she's still alive, living in the southern provinces. Most dismiss it, of course. Anselma is nearly blind and has a habit of talking to portraits. But you don't dismiss it. You find Anselma. She's older than the stones, with hands like knotted roots, and a voice so soft you have to lean in close to catch her words. She remembers you, not your name, but your face. You were there when she cried in the tapestry room, she says, nodding slowly. You helped her burn the letters. You don't deny it. She smiles, a thin, papery thing. She sends things, Anselma whispers. Now and then, little things, tokens, for me, for the ones who still remember. She shows you one, a small wooden hawk, carved roughly, tucked into the hem of her shawl. Came by post, no return mark, wrapped in blue silk. Your throat tightens. You ask if there have been others. She nods again, gestures toward a cracked vase on her shelf. Inside it, you find 2 more tokens, a pressed violet, dry but perfectly intact, and a tiny braid of golden hair tied with ribbon. The princess's hair, you're certain, so they're alive, somewhere, still reaching out, still remembering. That night, you sit by the fire in your chamber, fingers wrapped around the hawk carving, and wonder if she still wears the falcon pendant, if Emmerich still writes his ridiculous poetry by candlelight. Then something strange happens. A message arrives, slipped under your door. No name, no seal, just one sentence scrawled in hurried script. She knows you're here. You freeze. She meaning the queen, of course. You've been careful, but not careful enough. Maybe she recognized your gait or your voice. Or perhaps she never truly forgot the names tied to her stepdaughter's disgrace. You expect arrest, or worse, but it doesn't come. Instead, the next evening, you're summoned. Not officially, no guards, no fanfare. Just a page boy who whispers, she wants a word, and then leads you down a hallway lit with more shadows, then candles. You find the queen in her solar, seated beneath a stained glass window that casts red and blue across her silver-threaded gown. She gestures for you to sit. You do. For a long moment, there's only silence. Then she speaks. You always thought you were clever, she says, her voice soft but slicing. The letters, the forged seals, the lies. You don't respond. There's no point. I could have had you executed, she continues, folding her hands. Still, could you not? She leans forward. But I won't. You blink, unsure if you heard correctly. Because they survived, she says. Almost to herself. They escaped. Together, and I respect that. I hate it. But I respect it. You frown. She meets your gaze. I once had an Emmerich of my own, she says. A stable boy. Hands always smelled like oats. He taught me how to whistle like a lark. You wait. He died, she finishes. Hanged. They called it treason. Her expression doesn't change. So I let yours go, and I'll let you go, but never return here. Ever. My mercy doesn't extend twice. You nod, slowly, rise, and leave. She watches you the entire way out, like a judge in a silent courtroom. You don't look back. By dawn, you've packed your things. The castle shrinks behind you, its towers like fingers trying to pull you back. But you don't stop walking, until it disappears entirely. Weeks pass. You travel south, along dusty roads and sun-bleached fields, through towns where no one knows your name. Eventually, in a small village near the sea, you find a house with blue shutters and a garden full of hawk statues. You don't approach, you don't knock, but you see them, Emmerich, older, sun-browned, laughing as he chases a small child through the lavender. And her the princess now, in plain clothes, hair unbound, smiling in a way you've never seen before, peacefully, freely. You stay only a few moments, long enough to be sure, then you turn away. You don't want to disturb what they've built. Some stories are better left with quiet endings. Some love stories, even forbidden ones, deserve to breathe in peace. Asterisk. You leave the village by twilight, the sky painted with brush strokes of rose and indigo, the scent of lavender still clinging faintly to your cloak. And though you walk away from that blue-shuttered cottage without looking back, their laughter trails behind you like a ghost you almost welcome. Your feet carry you down a winding dirt road flanked by fields gone gold with late summer grain. And with each step, the weight of memory shifts inside you, not heavy, not quite light, just always there, like a pebble in your boot you've stopped noticing. You tell yourself that your role is finished, that the story of Emmerich and the runaway princess, who you now know goes by a humble name like Lyra or Malice or something equally unroyal, is over, or at least yours is. And yet, even as you make camp beneath a gnarled elm tree, wrapping yourself in your worn traveler's cloak and listening to the wind rattle dry leaves like bones, your mind refuses to settle. Instead, it drifts back to the castle and what it once meant to you, not the stones or tapestries or endless, echoing corridors, but the lives inside it. Lives you touched and helped reshape, however briefly. You think about Queen Elizabeth's eyes that night, how they seemed to shimmer not with cruelty but a buried sorrow, a longing swallowed down for decades until it left only frost. You wonder if she still walks the ramparts at night, searching the horizon for ghosts, or if she's finally learnt to sleep. Days pass, then weeks. You take on work in nearby towns, copying letters for a merchant here, reading horoscopes for a barmaid there, spinning 1,000 half-truths with the ease of a traveling bard. Who knows that the world is hungrier for good stories than it is for truth? But in each place, you leave behind something small, a symbol carved into a fence post, a pressed flower in a book, a line of poetry murmured to a sleepy child at bedtime. Not because you think Emmerich and the princess will ever hear them, but because it matters that someone remembers, even if only through symbols. One morning, in a riverside hamlet, where the fish smell never quite fades from the air, you overhear a young man reciting a poem, one of Emmerich's. You don't interrupt. You simply listen from the shadows, marveling at how words can travel farther than bodies, how love, especially the kind once forbidden, can take root in unexpected places and grow wild and unruly. Later that week, you meet a woman who sells paper birds at market stalls, folding them from scraps of discarded parchment and whispering blessings into their wings before handing them off to curious children. She wears a ring shaped like a hawk. You say nothing, but you buy one bird. It's crimson, folded perfectly, its wings trembling slightly in the wind. That night, you perch it beside your pillow and fall asleep dreaming of gardens and torchlight and a hand slipping into another, under the moon. But not all reminders are kind. In a fortified town near the borderlands, you cross paths with a former steward of the royal court, a man who once glared at you as you poured wine, and now eyes you with the flicker of distant recognition. He doesn't say your name, but his. Lip curls, and the next morning, the local guard questions you. You lie, of course. You're a scribe, a storyteller, a nobody. But the questioning lasts hours, and when you're finally released, you leave town with haste, heart hammering. You realize then that despite the time past, despite the peaceful cottage hidden behind hedges and birdsong, not everyone has let go. Someone, somewhere, still wants closure, maybe even revenge. So you move more carefully, change your name again, avoid castles. And yet the pull of the story keeps tugging at your sleeve. You begin recording it, not the dry, clinical version, fit for dusty archives, but the real one, as you remember it. The sweat on Emmerich's brow, the tremble in the princess's voice, the way the torchlight painted her face like stained glass. You write by candlelight, your ink often smudged with emotion you won't name. You leave copies where no one expects. The Munda floorboards, inside hollow tree trunks, behind the altar of a forgotten roadside chapel. Not for fame, not even for clarity, but because the tale refuses to die quietly. One evening, as a thunderstorm brews overhead and the sky roars like an angry king, you take shelter in a crumbling tavern at the edge of a forest. Inside, by the fire, a group of travelers is exchanging stories, and one begins. There was once a princess who ran away from her crown. You freeze. Listen. It's a twisted version dragons, added for flair. The queen turned into a literal witch, Emmerich recast as a long-lost prince in disguise, but the heart of it is unmistakable. They live, their legend breathes. Later, the storyteller, sharp-eyed girl, no older than 16, tells you she heard it from a peddler 2 towns over, who heard it from a merchant, who swears he met the couple and sold them olive oil. You ask no questions, just nod and smile and slip her a better version, written on a fresh sheet of parchment. Tell it this way, you say, closer to how it happened. She grins and tucks it into her satchel. You sleep that night with thunder shaking the walls and a strange comfort blooming in your chest. Love, you realize, doesn't need castles. It needs courage, connection, memory, and now, scattered across towns and villages, forests and fields, Emmerich and the princess have become a symbol not just of escape, but of choosing love over lineage, heart over heritage. The story, for all its danger, has become something people cling to, a fairy tale rooted in real soil, and you are its gardener. Long after the final kiss, long after the last letter burned, you are the one who tends it, prunes it, feeds it, not out of obligation, but because it matters, and because you were there. When winter comes again, the world grows quiet. Snow hushes even the loudest towns, and you find yourself staying longer in each place, content to share hot wine and soft stories with whoever will listen. You meet people who never knew the castle, but feel they've lived inside it just from your words. You pass along Emmerich's poems without claiming credit, watching eyes widen and hearts stir. And sometimes, in the stillness, you wonder if they ever think of you, those 2 lovers, now hidden from the world they once defied. Do they recall the notes passed, the false names whispered, the muddy boots pacing chapel floors? Probably not. Every detail. But maybe, now and then, they pause beneath their yew tree and remember that once, not so long ago, a stranger helped them reach freedom. And maybe that's enough. The days slip by like beads on a thread, each one carrying with it the soft rhythm of footsteps through foreign soil. New faces, new names, and yet always the same old story clutched tightly beneath your breath. You become more than just a witness. Now you're a keeper, a vessel for a forbidden love that once flickered through castle halls and now burns quietly across villages and valleys where no crown's hand can reach. You take on work as a chronicler, copying wills and drafting birth records, anything to stay moving, always listening, always watching for signs of them. Once, in a coastal inn, a woman with freckles and laughter like rain hums a tune you know. Emmerich used to whistle in the muse. You don't ask her name. You simply leave behind a note under her cup, folded and unsigned, with a single sentence, still dancing beneath the yew. The next morning, she's gone, and so is the note. A week later, in a marketplace, strung with colored silks, a merchant presses into your hand a small package wrapped in familiar blue linen inside, a carved acorn, polished and warm. You stare at it for a long while, heart aching with something between joy and sorrow. The message is clear. They remember, they're watching, just as you watch for them. You continue wandering, tracing the forgotten paths of their legend, gathering whispers like fireflies and tucking them into your memory. In a ruined monastery, you find a crumbling wall with initials carved deep, E+M, beneath the faint outline of a hawk. You don't know if it was them or a hopeful copycat, but it doesn't matter. It's the belief that counts, the way their story has begun to echo far beyond the reach of the castle that tried to silence it. Meanwhile, in distant corners of the realm, the queen grows older, and her name is spoken less frequently. Historians still argue whether Queen Elisande died in peace, or whether she took her secrets with her to a lonely grave overlooking the cliffs. Some claim she confessed her own past love on her deathbed, whispering about the stable boy whose eyes never left her mind. Others say she left behind a sealed chest containing the letters she never burned, the tokens she never returned, but no one can confirm it. The chest was either stolen, hidden, or never existed at all. What's certain is that after her death, the castle felt different. Lighter, perhaps, or maybe just older. No one replaced the statue in the garden. The falconry was converted into storage, and the garden where the princess once walked in secret is now overgrown with wild roses and silence. You return once briefly, in disguise, with your hood drawn low. You slip into the garden alone and find that same stone bench where she once sat, parchment in her hand, love in her eyes. You sit there now, years later, and feel the shadow of her presence like a warmth in the stone beneath you. You close your eyes and let memory take over. The rustle of silk skirts, the creak of leather boots, the echo of a heart leaping across rules and rituals. It hurts, but it's a sweet hurt, like pressing a bruise you don't want to forget. You leave a token of your own behind, hawk feather you've carried for years, tucked into a crack in the stone. Maybe no one will find it, maybe someone will. Either way, it's part of the trail now. The legacy grows. You hear the story being told in taverns and at festivals, embroidered into songs and turned into stage plays where Emmerich becomes a dashing prince and the princess wields a sword. You don't mind the embellishments. What matters is that people believe in the bones of Iten, the truth of love strong enough to defy towers and titles. A young girl once sits beside you at a campfire and tells you the tale as if she's the first to ever know it. You let her finish before smiling softly and saying, "He didn't carry a sword, you know, but his poetry was sharper than steel." She laughs, wide-eyed, and says, "You speak like you knew him, you only nod." It's easier that way. Eventually, you settle in a coastal village where no one asks too many questions. You open a small shop that sells ink and stories, and the children come to hear tales each evening as the sun slips into the sea. You teach them to read, to write, to believe. One boy writes a play about a runaway princess and casts his younger sister as the falcon. It's awful, and it's perfect. One spring, a letter arrives. No seal, no signature. Just a sketch of a yew tree and two names, Emmerich and Malice. The ink is faded, the parchment soft, but your hands shake as you hold it. On the back is written, "We've named her Lyra. She laughs like her mother and sings like a bird. Thank you for everything." You read it until the words blur. Then you tuck it into the back of your journal, next to the pressed violet and the acorn. You keep walking the same streets, telling the same story. And somewhere far from any castle or court, a family lives in peace because you once chose to believe. Not just in love, but in its right to exist without permission. Years pass, your hair grays, your steps slow. The children you once taught now bring their own children to your shop, and the legend becomes theirs to tell. You sit by the fire most evenings, eyes closed, listening to the sea and remembering a night long ago when a falcon soared into the mist and two lovers risked everything. You remember their voices, their trembling fingers, the hush of the chapel, the heartbeat of a horse beneath a starlit escape. One night, as sleep pulls you under like a tide, you dream of the garden again, moonlight, torchlight, petals falling like snow. And there, just ahead, walking toward the edge of the woods, Emmerich glances back and smiles, and the princess holds out her hand. You reach for it, and you are home. The story, after all, was never about a castle or a crown. It was about a choice, a leap, a truth whispered through feathers and fire. And in that final moment, as the dream softens and the world fades to quiet, you know without doubt that the love you witnessed and protected will never be forgotten. Years melt into memory, and you become something of a myth yourself. A fixture in that seaside village with the shop that smells of ink, parchment, and just a little sea salt. Children grow up listening to your stories, their wide eyes reflecting, flickering firelight and dreams of castles, secret passages, and lovers who dared too much. You rarely speak of yourself, not in a way that matters, and few ever ask. They know you only as the old storyteller, the one with the soft voice, the crooked smile, and the careful way you fold every tale like it's something sacred. Yet, somewhere in the middle of market days and quiet evenings, letters begin to find their way to your doorknob through any formal courier, but slipped under the sill, folded into loaves of bread, or hidden between pages of donated books. The first are short, unsigned, curious. Did the hawk ever return? Or do you think she still dreams of the garden? You never answer, not directly. Instead, your next story session shifts. And suddenly, the tale of the runaway princess takes a new turn. She learns to fish, to bake, to walk barefoot across sun-warmed stones. And one night, she teaches her daughter the same lullaby her own. Mother once sang beneath towering tapestries and gilded ceilings. The villagers listen, and the questions stop. They know your answer. You realize then that you've become a steward not only of a story, but of a quiet resistance, a remembrance, of freedom chosen over fate. One afternoon, while mending a cracked ink pot behind the counter, a traveler enters the shop. He's tall, cloaked, eyes shadowed by years on the road. He says nothing at first, just browses the scrolls and the stitched books. Then, in a voice, low and lined with something ancient, he murmurs, "Do you have anything about birds that don't return?" You glance up. Something in your chest stirs recognition. Hope. You nod slowly and hand him a slim journal you once bound yourself. He opens it and reads the first line aloud. Some birds do not return because they've found what they were, flying toward. He closes it gently and leaves a silver coin on the table. As he turns to go, he says, without looking back, "She still hums when she cooks." And just like that, he's gone. You don't chase him. You sit for a long time, fingers resting on the coin, heart pounding like you're 20 again, smuggling parchment through drafty corridors. That night, you light a single candle and write a new chapter, not for your audience, not for the children, but for yourself. You write about old hands clasped beneath starlight, about hair gone silver and love grown quiet, but no less fierce. You write about forgiveness, not from the world, but from the mirror, and you sleep better than you have in years. Spring returns. The hawthorn trees bloom with delicate white blossoms, and the sea softens from grey to blue. You host a festival of sorts, a gathering for storytellers and singers, for those who carry legends in their pockets like lucky stones. They come from all over, bringing riddles, jokes, and old tunes played on fiddles, tuned with string and memory. One young woman performs a ballad about a princess who jumped from a tower and was caught by the wind. It makes you laugh not because it's true, but because it might as well be. That night, after the fires die down and only the stars remain, you walk alone along the cliff edge, listening to the ocean whisper secrets. You wonder how many stories started here, how many ended. Below, the waves crash against the rocks, like a drumbeat, reminding you that everything returns eventually, even the things we think we've lost. You begin leaving behind pages like breadcrumbs. Not the full story, never, but moments, glimpses, enough for those who need to believe. You tuck them into stone walls, press them between tree bark, roll them into the mouths of bottles you toss gently into the tide. A child finds one and calls it treasure. A bard finds another and weaves it into a song. And somewhere, you hope, your two lost lovers hear a verse or two and smile. Still, time is a river, always pulling, and your hands begin to tremble more than they used to. You write slower, speak softer. Some nights you forget what you were saying, mid-sentence, only to recall it hours later, sitting by the hearth with a blanket on your knees. And yet, even this has its beauty. Your forgetfulness becomes part of the ritual. Children lean in closer. Adults fill in the blanks. The story no longer belongs to you alone. It never really did. One day, a girl with bright eyes and calloused hands walks into your shop and introduces herself as a student from the capital. She asks about the Emmerich legends, about the forbidden lovers, about the storyteller who once helped them escape. You raise an eyebrow. Do you believe they were real? You ask. She hesitates, then nods. I hope they were. You smile. Then that's enough. She spends the afternoon helping you tidy shelves, asks for nothing, leaves only a bookmark. Behind, woven from red thread and ribbon, the kind a princess might have worn once upon a time. That night, you place it in your favorite book and feel, for the first time in years, that something has come full circle. The sea winds blow in colder now. The moon hangs heavy in the sky, watching like an old friend, and you find yourself dreaming. Again, not of towers or castles, but of firelight and laughter, of stories that begin with secret glances and end with quiet hands brushing together beneath the stars. One morning, you don't open the shop. The villagers notice, of course. They knock, wait, whisper. Eventually, someone enters and finds you in your chair, a book on your lap, your head tilted as though simply dozing. You're smiling. On the table beside you, a final letter, sealed with wax pressed by a hawk-shaped ring, rests, untouched. It is addressed simply, to the one who remembered. They open it. Inside, a single line. We danced beneath the yew again. Last night, she still sings, and beneath it, two names, Emmerich, Malus. The villagers don't weep. They smile, raise a toast, and pass the story on, because now it belongs to everyone. Two lovers who run, to rebels who dream, to storytellers who carry the truth in ink-stained hands. You were never just the witness. You were the keeper, the flame holder, the soul who chose to believe. And in that belief, something timeless was born, something that will never die. Not as long as someone, somewhere, whispers the tale once more. You wake to the soft sound of waves brushing against worn stone, the salty breeze weaving through the open window and carrying with it memories as vivid as the morning light. It's been many years since you first stepped beyond the castle's shadow, yet the past still clings like mist, both comforting and relentless. Today, your fingers trace the edges of an ancient, faded map you discovered tucked between old books in your shop. Its parchment brittle but alive with secret paths and forgotten borders. The map hints at hidden sanctuaries, secret refuges where those fleeing love or war once found shelter, places that have now slipped from common knowledge but live on in whispered legend. The idea ignites something restless within you. Despite your years of wandering and telling stories, you realize the story you've guarded might be only a fragment of a larger tapestry. You decide to follow these old trails, the ones few dare to remember, to uncover other tales of forbidden love whispered in the shadows of kingdoms long gone. Packing your belongings with quiet determination, you set off once more into the uncertain dawn. The road winds through wildflower meadows where bees hum ancient lullabies, and through dense forests where sunlight fractures into golden shards. Along the way, you encounter folk of all kinds, farmers with sunburnt faces and eyes full of quiet grief, wandering minstrels who play haunting tunes on battered lutes, and old women who weave stories as deftly as they weave baskets. Each person seems to carry a piece of the past, fragments of forbidden romances and secret meetings beneath moonlit groves. One evening, in a humble village cloaked in mist, you find a crumbling chapel whose stained glass windows are cracked and faded but still catch the dying light in shimmering blues and reds. Inside, etched into the altar stone, you spot a name carved deep, Eleanor. Beneath it, a date long forgotten. You sit there until the sun sets completely, imagining the young woman who once knelt here, heart pounding with secret hope and fear. Around the village, you gather tales how Eleanor met a blacksmith's son despite her father's warnings, how their stolen kisses were carried on the wind like forbidden songs, and how they vanished one stormy night, leaving only a trail of whispered promises and broken locks. Historians still argue whether Eleanor's story was true or a romanticized tragedy born from oral tradition. But you know better. Love is often stranger than fact. You carry her story with you like a flame. Days later, crossing a mountain pass, blanketed in wild thyme and rocky outcrops, you stumble upon an old shepherd who invites you to share his fire. His eyes gleam with the weight of years, and as the flames dance, he tells you a tale you hadn't heard before, story of a knight who renounced his sword for the hand of a peasant girl, defying his king and kin. They escaped to a hidden valley where they lived unseen for decades, their love growing wild and fierce like the thorny roses that creep along the mountain paths. The shepherd's voice is low and reverent, and when he finishes, he looks at you, as if sharing a sacred secret. You thank him quietly and leave before dawn, the story etched deeper into your heart. Every new tale deepens the knot in your chest, the ache and wonder of love, wresting itself free from chains, from expectations, from harsh laws carved in stone and blood. You realize these stories are more than whispers. They're a defiant chorus that refuses to be silenced, a testament to the human spirit's stubborn hope. Along your journey, you notice something else, tokens left behind by these lovers. Small but potent symbols, a carved raven feather left in a hollow tree, a pressed rose petal folded inside a leather-bound journal, a silver ring worn smooth by time and devotion. You collect these relics carefully, adding them to your growing archive of love's quiet rebellions. In a bustling town market one rainy afternoon, you come across a young woman selling embroidered handkerchiefs. Her fingers are nimble and her smile shy. You notice the pattern on one the same hawk that once symbolized your princess and her. Emmerich, you purchase it without hesitation, and in return, she shares a story told by her grandmother of a pair of lovers who slipped through the cracks of history. Their names erased, but their love whispered among the wildflowers. You leave the market lighter, as if carrying a piece of her story alongside your own. Nights are your sanctuary and your battleground. Under the flickering light of your candle, you write feverishly, stitching these fragments into a tapestry, not just of one love, but of many a mosaic of courage and escape and whispered vows beneath the stars. Sometimes you wonder if these stories will ever find a home in the world beyond your pages, whether the world is ready to hold them tenderly instead of crushing them beneath crown and law. But then children gather at your feet, eyes wide and eager, and you see in them a hunger for hope. One such evening, a boy with bright eyes asks if the stories are true. You smile and reply, "True enough to live in your heart." He nods solemnly, clutching a wooden falcon you carved for him. Your own heart swells. Along this journey, you've learned that forbidden love is not just about passion or escape, it's about transformation. It changes the lovers, the witnesses, and the very land they cross. It leaves invisible threads connecting strangers, linking past to present, pain to hope. You feel those threads tug at you as you rest beneath ancient oaks, as you sip bitter tea in taverns, as you trace your fingers over faded ink on parchment. You are part of the story now, a living bridge between what was and what might be. And in that truth, you find a fragile peace as you near a small village nestled beside a silver river. You hear strains of music drifting through the evening air, lutes and flutes weaving a melody both haunting and hopeful. Drawn by the sound, you follow the path to a gathering beneath the trees where dancers twirl and storytellers spin their yarns. Among them, an old man recites verses about a princess who wore a falcon's heart and a squire who dared to love beyond rank. You join the circle, your voice soft but steady, as you add your own verse about a stranger who carried their story through years and miles, who tended the flame when others sought to snuff it out. The crowd listens, rapt, and when the last word falls like a feather, the night erupts in applause. You smile quietly, knowing the story is alive and spreading like wildfire. Later, as the moon climbs high, you sit by the riverbank and watch its silver ribbons wind toward the sea, carrying with them the tales of love and loss, courage and escape. You understand now that these stories are eternal currents, shaping the world beneath even the coldest stone. The past is never truly gone. It lives in the hearts of those brave enough to remember, to tell, to hope. You close your eyes, breathing in the night air tinged with wildflowers and promise. You're tired, yes, but your soul feels lighter than it has in years. For the first time, you sense the journey isn't about an ending, but a beginning-gain continuum where every whispered tale, every stolen glance, every quiet rebellion becomes part of something far greater. As dawn breaks, painting the horizon with soft gold and rose, you rise and begin walking again, footsteps light and sure, carrying the weight of many stories, but none too heavy to bear. You are not just a keeper of history, you are a guardian of love's enduring spark. And as the world wakes around you, you step forward into the light, ready for whatever stories the next path will bring. You wake to the delicate rustle of morning breeze weaving through the curtains of your modest room, sunlight dappling the wooden floor like scattered gold coins. And though the years have softened your steps and grayed your hair, a fire still smoulders within you, a fire born from those forbidden loves and whispered escapes that shape the path you've walked so far. The world outside hums with life, vibrant and relentless, and you find yourself restless once more, yearning to uncover deeper layers of the tapestry you've carried all this time. The stories you have gathered, the princess who fled, the knight who abandoned his sword. The blacksmith's daughter, each thread seems to pulse with untold secrets waiting to be uncovered. And you decide to follow these threads into places forgotten by maps and memory alike. Packing a small satchel with worn parchment, a stub of charcoal, and the carved wooden falcon you carry always, you set off toward the northern forests, rumored to shelter hermits and hidden glades where lovers once met beneath tangled boughs. Far from prying eyes and harsh decrees, the journey is long and winding, the paths often swallowed by undergrowth and shadow, but each step brings new encounters, a woodcutter who hums an old tune of love lost to war, a herbalist who gifts you a vial of lavender oil said to ease the heart's ache, and children who listen wide-eyed to your tales. Clutching tiny carved birds, they declare, are messengers to faraway realms. One evening, you find shelter in a forgotten hamlet nestled between towering pines, its inhabitants wary but kind. Over a flickering fire, an elder woman named Mela recounts the legend of two lovers, one a healer, the other a scholar who defied the edicts of their time, exchanging secret letters sewn into quilt patches, hiding their love in patterns only they could read. Historians still argue whether the quilt still exists or if the tale is an allegory, but Mala's voice carries the weight of truth, and you drink it in, promising to carry her story forward. The next morning, before dawn, you explore the surrounding woods and stumble upon a moss-covered stone marked with a faded heart and intertwined initials, barely visible beneath layers of time. You place your falcon beside it, a silent vow to honor their love as you've done for so many others. Days blend into nights, and the rhythm of your journey carries you through bustling market towns and tranquil glades, always chasing whispers and symbols, an acorn necklace passed down through generations, a hand-stitched handkerchief tucked into a soldier's armor, a poem carved into a bridge's worn stone. Each artifact, each tale, deepens your conviction that love, especially the kind forged in secrecy and rebellion, is an unyielding force, more enduring than kingdoms and crowns. One rainy afternoon, sheltering beneath the eaves of a chapel, you meet a young scribe named Corin, whose curiosity and quiet passion mirror your own when you first began this pilgrimage of stories. You share with him the legend of the runaway princess and Emmerich, and he listens with rapt attention, eyes shining with the hunger to know more, to preserve these tales for those who come after. Together, you pore over dusty tomes and fragmented records, piecing together timelines and cross-referencing oral histories, breathing new life into stories nearly lost to time. Nights are spent by candlelight, debating the truths behind myth and the myths behind truth, wondering aloud whether love stories are ever truly just stories, or if they contain some deeper essence, something historians still argue over centuries. Later, through Corin's enthusiasm and your own steady guidance, you find renewed purpose to create a living archive of love's quiet revolutions, a repository where forbidden romances and secret vows are not buried but celebrated. Your partnership blossoms into a friendship steeped in shared dreams and mutual respect, the kind forged not in castle halls but in the humble glow of ink-stained desks and whispered confidences. The world outside remains restless, rife with wars, alliances, and betrayals, but within your sanctuary of stories, hope takes root and flourishes. You travel together, collecting stories from villages tucked in valleys and hamlets clinging to cliffs. From fishermen's wives who speak of lovers lost to the sea and bakers who hide notes beneath loaves for their sweethearts to find. Each tale adds a brushstroke to your ever-expanding canvas, painting a mosaic of humanity's most tender rebellion, the choice to love despite all odds. One day, in a bustling port city, fragrant with salt and spice, you and Corin discover a manuscript unlike any other, its pages fragile but its words vivid, chronicling the life of a woman who disguised herself as a man to follow her beloved into battle. Their love surviving amid the clash of swords and the roar of cannon fire. The manuscript's authenticity is debated by scholars, some claiming it a fanciful romance, others insisting on its historical truth. But to you and Corin, it is a precious jewel, a testament to love's many faces. You work tirelessly to translate and preserve it, ensuring its story joins the others in your growing collection. As seasons shift and years press onward, your journey becomes less about fleeing and more about belonging to a lineage of hearts that dared to beat loud and true when silence was demanded. The archive you build grows beyond your own hands, as others add their voices, their memories, and their courage. You hold festivals beneath open skies, where stories are sung and danced, where children learn the names of lovers long gone but never forgotten. One evening, as a golden sun dips below the horizon, you find yourself sitting beneath a mighty oak, the bark etched with initials and dates, symbols of love's endurance, carved by hands long turned to dust. You run your fingers over the carvings, feeling the pulse of history beneath your skin, and understand at last that these stories are not just relics, but living things, breathing, evolving, and eternal. The weight of years rests gently upon you, but your spirit is light, buoyed by the knowledge that the tales you have nurtured will outlast stone walls and royal decrees. As twilight deepens and stars begin to prick the sky, you close your eyes and hear a familiar melody, Emrich's whistle carried on the night wind. The princess's laughter echoing softly like a lullaby. You smile, heart full, knowing that love, in all its forbidden glory, will always find a way to soar. Asterisk. The seasons turn with a steady rhythm, and though your hair has grown silver and your steps slow with the passage of time, the fire that first ignited your journey, sparked by forbidden glances and whispered promises, still burns brightly within your chest. You find yourself drawn to the edges of the known world, to borderlands where kingdoms blur and where tales of secret loves thrive in the shadows cast by great walls and watchtowers. In a town perched on the edge of a rugged cliff, you hear murmurs of a pair who once defied their fates, a young blacksmith and a noblewoman who met beneath a moonless sky, weaving their dreams into the fabric of the night. This story, like so many others, has evolved over generations, embroidered with dragons and daring escapes, yet at its heart lies the same pulse of love and rebellion you have come to know so intimately. You decide to investigate, following the faded footprints left behind in local ballads and the quiet nods of elders. The path takes you through winding cobblestone streets scented with salt and smoke, past faded murals depicting impossible acts of bravery, to an ancient chapel whose doors have long since surrendered to ivy and time. Inside, you find a bench, carved with initials entwined in a heart, half raced but still defiantly present. You sit and let the silence wrap around you, imagining the stolen moments shared here centuries ago, hurried kisses, the soft tears, the promises exchanged beneath trembling stars. Stories like these challenge the rigid histories taught in dusty halls. And historians still argue whether these legends were mere fanciful fabrications or rooted in truth too wild for royal records. But you know, from the quiet way the villagers speak and the reverence in their eyes, that somewhere between myth and reality lives a love that refused to be contained. Your journey continues across forests thick with ancient oaks and across fields that stretch wide beneath endless skies, gathering fragments of whispered romances and secret meetings. Each tale you encounter enriches the mosaic of human connection, a vibrant thread weaving through the tapestry of time. You collect tokens left behind, a hand-stitched handkerchief with faded embroidery, a silver pendant shaped like a falcon's wing, a pressed wildflower carefully preserved between pages. These relics are not mere artifacts. They are the heartbeat of stories that refuse to die, each one a testament to courage, hope, and the relentless pursuit of love in a world that often denied it. In a bustling marketplace, drenched with the scent of spices and fresh bread, you meet a traveling minstrel whose voice carries the stories of countless lovers, sung in haunting melodies that stir your soul. Over shared cups of wine, he reveals a secret verse about a princess who ran away to live among common folk, her heart forever bound to a stable boy whose name history forgot but whose love lives on in song. You exchange tales and tokens, recognizing in each other a shared devotion to preserving the lives behind legends. The minstrel promises to carry your story across distant lands, and you entrust him with a delicate parchment inscribed with verses, written in your own hand. As days turn to weeks, you and the minstrel part ways, each continuing to bear the flame of love's defiance. Nights under starlit skies become moments of reflection and renewal. By flickering firelight, you write the stories into journals bound with care, knowing that your hands may one day still, but your words will endure. Your fingers sometimes tremble, but your resolve never falters. The past you carry is both burden and blessing, a precious inheritance passed down from those who dared to love beyond boundaries and bloodlines. In quiet moments, you think of the princess and Emmerich, their laughter like a soft echo in your mind, the memory of their touch as real as the cool breeze on your skin. You wonder if they ever thought of you, the stranger who bore witness, who kept their story alive when silence was demanded. You imagine them beneath the yew tree, hands entwined, eyes shining with the freedom they fought to claim. One evening, as the moon bathes the earth in silver, you are visited by a young woman whose eyes shine with curiosity and courage. She introduces herself as a scholar dedicated to unearthing the hidden histories of forbidden loves, and you feel an instant kinship. Together, you pore over manuscripts and letters, cross-examining facts and legends, piecing together truths hidden beneath layers of myth. Her passion rekindles your own, and you realize the work you began may live on through her, a torch passed from one guardian of stories to another. As dawn breaks over rolling hills, you walk through a meadow carpeted with wildflowers, their colors vibrant against the soft green. The air is thick with the scent of earth and renewal, and you breathe deeply, feeling the weight of years lift from your shoulders. You know the journey has been long and winding, filled with moments of joy and sorrow, hope and loss, but through it all, one truth remains steadfast. Love, especially the love that defies, endures beyond castles and crowns, beyond time itself. You close your eyes and let the gentle hum of nature surround you, the song of birds and the whisper of wind weaving into the quiet rhythm of your heart. And as the world stirs awake, you smile softly, knowing that the stories you have carried, cherished and shared will continue to light the way for all those who dare to love without limits. You awake once more to the soft murmur of dawn spilling over the hills, the chill of morning dew clinging to your sleeves as you prepare for another day of wandering through forgotten places and unraveling stories whispered by the winds. Each step you take is laden with the weight of centuries, the ghosts of forbidden lovers and secret trysts guiding you along paths worn smooth by time and tears. You've long since ceased to seek just the grand tales inscribed in stone and royal records. Instead, you find yourself drawn to the quieter, humbler stories, those told in the language of shadows and silences, in the exchanged glances behind closed doors, and in letters sewn into quilted blankets. Today, you venture toward a village nestled in the folds of a deep valley, where villagers speak in hushed tones of the moonlit meetings, clandestine rendezvous held beneath the cover of darkness among the ancient standing stones that dot the landscape. As you walk among these monoliths, you feel the pulse of countless secrets buried in the earth, the lingering breath of love that once defied edicts and expectation. The village elder, a stooped man with eyes like weathered glass, invites you into his home, where the walls are adorned with faded tapestries depicting lovers fleeing on horseback, their faces blurred by time but their courage unmistakable. He recounts a tale of a healer named Alina and a bard named Roderick, whose love blossomed amid plague and persecution, a love that inspired ballads sung long after their names faded from official history. You listen, spellbound, as he reveals how Alina risked everything, tending to the sick in secret, while Roderick's songs became a beacon of hope for the oppressed. Their story, though lacking the glamour of royal intrigue, resonates deeply, proof that love's defiance lives not only in palaces but also in humble hearths and hidden hearts. Historians still debate the veracity of these accounts, arguing whether the tales are embellished folklore or grounded in actual events. Yet you find comfort in the ambiguity, for sometimes truth is found in belief itself. As night descends, you sit beneath the vast canopy of stars, the cool air filled with the scent of wild thyme and burning wood. The village gathers around a fire, where a young woman sings the ballad of Alina and Roderick, her voice weaving through the night like a thread connecting past and present. You close your eyes, imagining the lovers' footsteps mingling with the crackling flames, their promises echoing through the ages. The following days lead you through dense forests and mist-covered moors, each landscape a silent witness to countless stories of hearts braving danger for the chance to be together. Along the way, you collect mementos left by lovers, a lock of hair tied with a ribbon found beneath a mossy stone, a rusted ring buried deep in the soil, a fragment of embroidered cloth caught on a thorn bush. Each object tells its own tale, adding texture and depth to the ever-growing mosaic of forbidden love. In a market town, alive with the scent of spices and freshly baked bread, you encounter a group of traveling actors rehearsing a play about a queen who forsook her throne for a commoner, their performances filled with passion and defiance. You share with them the real stories you have gathered, and they promise to weave these truths into their performances, carrying them far and wide. It's a moment of quiet triumph, knowing that these tales will live on, not only in dusty tomes, but in the hearts of people who may never set foot in a castle or court. Your journey continues to take unexpected turns, sometimes leading you to abandoned ruins where silence hangs thick, and other times to bustling inns where laughter masks longing. You meet descendants of those who lived these stories, their eyes reflecting inherited pain and pride, and you learn that love's legacy is not confined to the past, but breathes in the lives of the present. Through these connections, you come to understand that your role is not merely as a chronicler, but as a guardian, keeper of memories that might otherwise fade into oblivion. You begin to record your own reflections alongside the stories you collect, weaving in your thoughts on courage, sacrifice, and the resilience of the human heart. The act of writing becomes a ritual, a way to honor the countless nameless lovers whose voices might otherwise be lost. One evening, as you rest beside a quiet stream, a stranger approaches a woman with eyes like storm clouds and a smile tinged with melancholy. She introduces herself as an artist seeking inspiration from tales of love and loss, and you find an immediate kinship. Together, you explore the nearby woods and villages, sharing stories and sketches, her brush capturing the emotions you so often struggle to express in words. Her presence rekindles a spark within you, a reminder that connection and creation often go hand in hand. Time flows gently as you continue your pilgrimage, the tapestry of stories growing richer and more intricate with each passing day. You find solace in the understanding that love's forbidden nature does not diminish its power, but rather magnifies its brilliance, shining brightest when it defies the darkest constraints. Historians continue to debate the origins and truths behind many of these tales, but for you, the debates pale beside the lived experience of love's endurance. You realize that the essence of your quest is not to prove or disprove, but to bear witness, to hold space for stories that need to be told, for voices that demand to be heard. As the seasons shift once again, you settle briefly in a coastal town, where the sea's endless horizon mirrors your own yearning for freedom and connection. Here, you establish a small gathering place where storytellers, singers, and listeners come together to share their own tales of loves, triumphs, and tragedies. The walls echo with laughter, tears, and music, a living testament to the power of narrative to heal and unite. Children listen wide-eyed as elders recount the adventures of lovers who crossed boundaries of class and creed, and young couples find courage in these stories to defy their own limitations. One particularly stormy night, as thunder rolls over, the waves a group gathers around the hearth to hear the story of the princess and Emmerich, their voices soft with reverence and longing. The tale, once confined to the shadows of history, now shines brightly, illuminating the hearts of all present. As you listen, you feel the profound truth that love, even when forbidden, is a force that transcends time, place, and circumstance. It is a light that cannot be extinguished, a melody that will always find an audience. And as sleep gently claims you beneath the steady rhythm of rain, you know that your journey, your story, and the stories you have gathered will continue to ripple outward, touching lives and inspiring hearts long after you are gone. You awaken to the soft murmur of a distant brook, sunlight filtering through leaves and casting gentle patterns on the wooden floor where you rest. A reminder that time flows on even as stories linger, waiting to be told and retold beneath the ever-turning skies. Your body may tire, but your spirit remains as curious and restless as the first day. You set out to chase whispers of forbidden love hidden within castles and kingdoms long past. Today, your path leads you into a deep valley, blanketed with mist, where ancient stone circles stand sentinel like silent witnesses to promises made beneath moonlight and stars. The locals speak of these stones as places where love once flourished in secret, where hands clasped tightly despite the threat of exile or worse. In a small cottage nearby, you meet a woman whose grandmother was said to have been a healer who, tended to these lovers, providing sanctuary and hope when all else seemed lost. Her stories are woven with quiet reverence, tales of whispered words exchanged beneath the cloak of darkness, of stolen moments beside flickering candlelight, and of the resilience required to hold onto love when the world demanded silence. You collect her memories with care, recording each detail as if it were a precious gem, knowing that these personal histories fill the gaps left by grander chronicles. Historians continue to debate whether these stone circles were primarily ritual sites or secret meeting places, but you sense they were both a testament to love's deep roots entwined with belief and tradition. Traveling further, you find yourself amidst rolling hills dotted with wildflowers where a festival unfolds, celebrating not the kings or warriors, but the stories of those who dared to love beyond boundaries of class, faith, and duty. The air is thick with music and laughter, voices raised in song, and the scent of roasting meats mingling with wild herbs. You join the circle, sharing your own tales alongside farmers, minstrels, and children, their eager faces lit by firelight as they absorb the courage and heartache in every narrative. It is here you realize that the essence of forbidden romance is universal, a thread connecting humanity across centuries and cultures. In quiet moments, you reflect on your own journey from the secret corridors of castles to the humble hearths. A villager's recognizing that love's power lies not in grandeur, but in its quiet, persistent rebellion. You think of the princess and Emmerich, their story a beacon among many, reminding you that love, when true, will always find a way to endure, even when the world says it must not. As your travels continue, you cross paths with an elderly scholar, dedicated to preserving oral histories, his eyes bright despite the weight of years. Together, you exchange stories, debating the fine line between myth and history, fact and belief. He challenges your assumptions gently, prompting you to consider the layers of interpretation that color every tale. And you welcome the discourse, knowing that understanding deepens through dialogue. The scholar shares a manuscript containing accounts of lovers who used coded language and secret symbols to communicate. Their devotion hidden in plain sight within everyday objects: a folded napkin, a carved wooden box, a simple ring engraved with a cipher. You are fascinated by these acts of quiet defiance, the ingenious ways people preserved their love against odds. With renewed purpose, you seek out similar artifacts, eager to uncover the hidden meanings beneath worn surfaces and faded inscriptions. Your collection grows, not only in stories, but in tangible tokens of love's persistence. On a brisk autumn morning, you arrive at a coastal village where a lighthouse stands watch over storm-tossed seas. The keeper, a solitary figure with weather-beaten hands, shares a poignant tale of a forbidden love between a sailor and a woman from the cliff separated by the sea yet united in heart, their love sustained through messages sent by light signals and driftwood carvings. The story is suffused with longing and hope, a reminder that love's reach knows no boundaries, not even the vastness of the ocean. You leave the village with the keeper's blessing, carrying with you a small charm shaped like a star, a symbol of guidance and enduring affection. Nights are often spent beneath the vast canopy of stars, your fingers tracing the outlines of constellations as you ponder the many forms love takes: passion, sacrifice, quiet companionship, and fierce loyalty. You write by candlelight, crafting your own narratives alongside the ones you have collected, weaving together threads of history, legend, and personal reflection. The act of storytelling becomes a balm, soothing the ache of years spent in exile. From your own heart's desires, and connecting you to the countless others who dared to love beyond the rules set before them. One evening, a young woman arrives at your humble gathering place, her eyes bright with the fire of youth and a hunger for knowledge. She shares her own story of a forbidden love, recounting the challenges faced and the strength found in defiance. You listen with empathy, recognizing echoes of your own journey in her words. Together, you explore the importance of preserving these narratives, understanding that each story, no matter how small or hidden, contributes to a greater understanding of human resilience and hope. The world outside continues to change, kingdoms rise and fall, but within the circle of stories and shared experiences, a timeless truth remains. Love, especially when forbidden, is a revolutionary act, a declaration of freedom that transcends time and place. As you grow older, your steps slower but your heart no less fervent, you realize that your role has evolved from seeker to keeper, from wanderer to guardian. You nurture the stories like tender seedlings, ensuring they take root in the hearts of those who will carry them forward. And in doing so, you become part of the very tapestry you have devoted your life to preserving, a living thread woven into the endless fabric of love's enduring legacy. Under a sky brushed with the soft hues of dawn, you close your eyes and breathe deeply, the scent of wildflowers and sea salt mingling with the whispers of 1,000 lovers who have gone before. You feel their presence, a warm embrace across time, and know that your journey, like theirs, is both an ending and a beginning, an invitation to all who hear these tales to love boldly, quietly, and without apology. You awake slowly, the soft morning light filtering through the tattered curtains of your lodgings. A gentle reminder that despite the weariness that clings to your bones, your journey is far from over. The stories you carry ripple within you, like a river that refuses to run dry, urging you onward to places where whispered love defied kingdoms and shaped destinies in silence and shadow. This morning, your path winds toward a dense forest rumored to hold an ancient hermitage, a secluded retreat where lovers once sought refuge from the suffocating grasp of royal decree and rigid class divisions. The forest air is thick with pine and damp earth, and as you walk beneath towering trees whose branches knit a cathedral ceiling above, you feel the weight of countless secret meetings held under these very boughs, the stolen kisses, the trembling promises, the quiet defiance that thrummed like a secret heartbeat amid the stillness. In a clearing bathed in dappled sunlight, you find the remnants of a stone hearth, moss-covered and crumbling, evidence of a life once lived here perhaps, a sanctuary for those whose love was outlawed and whose names have slipped from the pages of official history. Nearby, you discover a bundle of weathered parchments tied with a faded ribbon, inscribed with poetry and coded messages between two souls separated by lineage but united in passion. The words speak of longing and hope, of plans to escape beneath the cover of darkness and build a life far from prying eyes. You carefully add these pages to your growing archive, each one a precious testament to love's tenacity. As you travel onward, you come upon a village alive with the vibrant colors of a festival celebrating midsummer, a time when legend holds the veil between worlds thins and the magic of love blooms strongest. The villagers, dressed in bright garlands and flowing linen, share stories passed down through generations, tales of lovers who defied tradition and found each other against all odds. You listen to an elderly woman recount the story of Alwyn and Gareth, whose union was forbidden by their families but sanctified in secret beneath the light of the full moon. Their love was said to have healed old wounds between feuding clans, a rare victory of heart over hatred. Historians still debate whether such unions truly altered political tides, or if these stories are poetic fictions. But the villagers' reverence suggests a deeper truth love as a catalyst for change, even when wrapped in secrecy. You spend days immersing yourself in this community, recording not only their stories, but also the songs and dances that celebrate them. Understanding that cultural memory lives as much in art as in words. As twilight descends, you join the villagers in lighting lanterns that float into the night sky, each glowing orb a symbol of hope and remembrance, carrying wishes for love to triumph anew. Continuing your journey, you reach a coastal fortress battered by relentless waves and salty winds. Though its walls are worn, the fortress still holds secrets within its shadowed halls. You learn of a forbidden romance between the Lord's daughter and a humble sailor whose love was concealed beneath the roar of the sea and the watchful eyes of guards. Their story is etched into the very stone's hidden compartments, secret passages, and coded marks left to guide those who come after. You explore these hidden spaces, tracing the route of their clandestine meetings, feeling the thrill of discovery mingled with the sorrow of inevitable separation. Among the crew, sailors pass down tales of the love that defied duty and danger, keeping the memory alive amid storms and voyages. You gather their stories, marveling at how love carves its own path even through the harshest realities. In quiet moments beside the crashing waves, you reflect on the resilience required to love in defiance. How such love demands courage, not only from the lovers, but from all who bear witness and remember. You find that each story, each artifact, is a thread woven into a vast tapestry of human experience. Complex and beautiful in its imperfections, your collection grows, becoming a mosaic that honors those who dared to dream beyond the constraints imposed upon them, whose hearts beat boldly despite the world's attempts to silence them. One evening, as you sit beneath a sky strewn with stars, you are joined by a poet whose verses echo the very essence of your journey, themes of longing, loss, and the unyielding hope that love inspires. Together, you craft new stories, blending past and present, myth and memory, ensuring that the flame of forbidden romance burns brightly for generations to come. You recognize in this collaboration the power of shared creation to heal and inspire, a reminder that stories live and grow in the spaces between teller and listener. As your days draw toward twilight, you sense that your role is shifting from seeker of tales to keeper of legacy, entrusted with preserving a heritage of love's quiet rebellions. You nurture this responsibility with humility and gratitude, knowing that the stories you safeguard will outlive you, guiding others to love fiercely and freely. And as you gaze upon the horizon, where sea and sky blend into infinite possibility, you feel the profound truth that love, especially the love that defies and endures, the truest freedom of all. The past and future intertwine in this understanding, and you close your eyes, heart full, ready for whatever stories the next dawn will bring. Asterisk. The morning sun rises slowly, casting golden fingers of light across your worn traveling cloak, its threads now embroidered not with silk or wealth, but with the stories of 100 hearts who dared to love when they weren't supposed to. The chill in the air is mild, not biting, but enough to remind you that time is always passing, even here at the end of your long, wandering road. You stir slowly, not out of weariness, but from a reluctance to part with the dreams that visited you. In sleep dreams of the runaway princess, of Emmeric's violet smile, of wind-blown meadows where secrets were whispered like hymns. You rise, stretch your stiff limbs, and begin walking once more, not toward any particular destination, but into the folds of memory, reflection, and final discovery. The landscape around you has grown quieter, softer. Birds trill in the distance. A stream hums low. The path you walk is less worn than the ones before, edged with lavender and scattered wildflowers, as if nature itself is celebrating all that you've carried. As you pass the remains of an old stone cottage, long collapsed and embraced by ivy, you imagine a couple who once hid there, sharing bread, laughter, and maybe even fear. Their names are lost to time, but their presence feels real, almost sacred. And you pause to place one of your collected tokens, a carved falcon once belonging to a long-dead noblewoman, beside a stone near what might have been their hearth. You move on, heart full but heavy, and find yourself in a quiet hamlet where only a few elders remain. One of them, a woman with a voice like winter wind and hands as soft as moth wings, tells you the tale of a noble knight who renounced his title to live as a healer's apprentice, all to remain close to the man he loved. A tale unrecorded in any royal chronicle, but etched forever into the rhythm of the villagers' songs. Historians still argue whether knights of the medieval era ever strayed from the expected path of marriage and bloodlines, but the villagers do not care for arguments. They care only for remembrance. They light candles for those lovers every spring, place petals at the riverbank where the two were last seen, and tell the story not as scandal, but as sacred. You listen, as always, with reverence. As evening falls, you arrive at a hill that overlooks the sea, the vast grey-blue expanse stretching out like a final exhale. This is where it began for many of the lovers you followed, for sailors who loved blacksmiths' sons, for seamstresses who yearned for widowed queens, for soldiers who tucked poetry into their boots, never knowing if they'd return to whisper those verses aloud. You sit, watching the light change, and you begin to write. This is not a story of one princess or one knight. This is the story of many of those left behind in history's margins, whose love, though forbidden, burned hotter than any crown, stronger than any decree. You write not for kings and popes, but for the hidden hearts, for the girl who once kissed her handmaiden under the yew tree, for the stable boy who promised he'd come back in spring but never did, for the widowed duchess who loved her maid and carved their initials where no one dared to look. You do not pause. The ink flows. The stories pour out of you like rain, quiet but relentless. You remember the festivals where couples danced behind closed doors, their fingers barely brushing, afraid to show too much, but longing always visible in the eyes. You remember letters smuggled in bread loaves, locks of hair buried beneath chapel floors, songs coded with names and dates, and promises etched into rings small enough to hide in a boot heel. You remember, and as you write, you know the words will outlive you. They will be read by another, maybe a young girl afraid to speak her love aloud, or a boy told that his heart betrays his blood. Maybe someone forgotten will read what you have written and finally feel seen. That is enough. That is everything. When you finish writing, you gather your parchments into a leather pouch worn soft by time. You descend the hill where a circle of young people waits near a small fire. Some wear cloaks, others armor, others only threadbare tunics and hopeful eyes. You join them without words. One of them no more than 16 asks you to share a story. You do. You begin with the tale of the queen who fled to the forest, not for freedom, but for love. You speak softly, the fire crackles, eyes widen, heads tilt, the listeners press closer. You tell of hidden chapels and secret vows, of tattoos etched in code of two girls who traded names in order to be buried side by side. There are tears, but they are gentle. You finish, and no one speaks for a while. Then one girl stands and places a bracelet in your hand, a simple braid of leather and dried rose stems. "For all the ones we lost," she says. "For all the ones we remember." You take it, you nod, you understand. That night, as you lie beneath the stars with the bracelet wrapped around your wrist, you feel a peace you haven't felt since the day you began walking. You think of the first time you heard Emmerich's name, of the first time you read the princess's letter, of the first artifact you held, that fragile ring hidden in a hollow tree. And you realize it was never about the past alone. It was about the continuity of courage, the enduring heartbeat of love. Even now, across centuries, the pulse still echoes. You let sleep claim you with that rhythm in your chest. And just before you drift away, you whisper, "They will not be forgotten. Not now, not ever."